What the Tech is brought to you by Glasswire. Having network issues? Instantly reveal bandwidth hogs, malware, and privacy-violating apps. Then block them. Head on over to glasswire.com to check it out. Hello, everybody. Welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarian. Of course, I'm joined by Mr. Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good. How are you?
Busy day, busy couple months. This has been, sometimes you wonder and you're like, oh, is things going to settle down? No, it never does. Things don't calm down. Things just keep going crazy.
Yeah.
And for you, you're a empty nester once again.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly went back to school. Mark's back in school, and you're on your own.
Well, I have a wife. I'm not completely on my own, but yes. Yeah.
Are they doing full classes or no? They're doing remote, even though they're dorming.
It's right now. I think both of them are 100% remote, but they're doing it from. Mark lives in an apartment, but Kelly is in a dorm. Yeah. I mean, obviously, the hope is over the course of the semester there'll be some in person.
Yeah, I think that's the hope for everybody and everything right now. It's we're at the end, guys. Just hang in there. A lot to talk about, actually, and something I want to really go over with Paul is kind of reassessing how streaming is going, streaming content, all the content services. It's every couple of years we look at this, and somebody sent me a clip, Paul, and I think we were doing it in 2014, and you had said that, and you said something interesting. You said, with all these different streaming services, it seems like everything is going to be bundled under one eventually, right? Like you're going to have bundles of these.
Sure.
And it really seems like that's what's happening. And I kind of want to summarize this because there was some news with Peacock this week, and this kind of ties into the wrestling stuff that I do. But Peacock absorbed the WWE Network for a $1 billion deal over the course of 5 years. It's $250 million a year to absorb their subscribers and their content onto the Peacock, Peacock streaming service. And this brings up a very interesting conversation to have. And that's, is this going to be the trend? Is this what we're going to see happen? And we have already seen it happen. And I think a lot of people, with everything going on in the world, I think a lot of people missed something that happened last year. And that's, I'll give you an example. Viacom has X amount of properties, right? And NBC Universal has X amount of properties. So there's, the E channel, and there's this channel and that channel, and they all have their streaming platforms. You could technically go on, you could download the Bravo app, for example, right? Is Bravo part of NBC? I think it is. You go on Bravo.
Who could keep track of this?
I know. But let's say you like Bravo. So you have a Bravo app. Let's say you like sci-fi. You have a sci-fi app or whatever, whatever the options are. Now what they've done is that they're removing these apps and they're putting one universal app for that network. So there's an NBC app. And if you go on the NBC app, you see all their channels that have apps and they're streaming. And they kind of treat it as if it's its own cable provider where you could watch live and you could watch on-demand content. And you're seeing Fox did this with FX and all their Fox properties. And that was the beginning of consolidating, because it gets really complicated to manage. If you have 20 different channels, now you have 20 different apps, and you're double managing, and there's no network crossover, right? Because you're now isolated into a bubble.
Yeah.
This seems to be the approach now. So what Peacock has done is absorb the WWE Network, and I'm bringing this up because this is a good example of what the trend could possibly turn into, and they're just putting it as one of their properties. And you had mentioned that you see this being, we're going back to 2014. You kind of alluded that, I don't know if you meant bundled like this or bundled like how Hulu and Disney are bundled, but is this the beginning of kind of merging different streaming providers into one service? Because really the $9.99s here and there are kind of adding up.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I think there's a kind of a proliferation of services now. CBS All Access, Peacock, like you said, that are kind of on the periphery, and a couple of the bigger ones like Disney Plus, obviously gangbusters since it launched over a year ago. HBO Max has gone really well. but all of a sudden, yeah, there's like 50 of them,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, I just want to watch a certain show. Where is it? Like that remains a problem, So some of the ways you can overcome that are literal bundles, right? And we see that, Hulu does this, Amazon does this, Apple does this, where you can kind of tack services on to what they offer and then, access it all from a single location. That's one approach. The other one are actual aggregators, right? Do what the Google Newses of the world do, but do them with video. Apple's trying to do this with Apple TV. Google's trying to do it right with Google TV. I think they're probably the most effective. Even Amazon, which obviously wants to push its own stuff over third-party services, is doing it through the Fire TV products. I mean, that's one way. There's a discussion to be had too around the cost of all these things. When you say, the $9.99s are adding up, they absolutely are. The one thing I would remind people, because I get this complaint regularly, and sometime in the past week I wrote something about streaming. I think it was the average amount of that American families are spending on streaming services has gone up $10 in the past year to $47. And of course, people see that like, oh, it's might as well just pay for cable. You're getting everything in one place anyway. And okay, but I think the message has shifted a bit on the streaming services, because there's still a major benefit that you get there that you can't get with cable. And mobility, for lack of a better term, it's the ability to turn services on and off on the fly. And
that's an interesting point you bring up all the time. And I think a lot of people overlook that the benefit is that you're not committed to a 2-year contract. Right. You're not committed to wires being run to your house. And that's already been done.
I do this not on any kind of planned schedule, but roughly once a year I kind of examine all the things I'm paying for. I'm overdue for doing that now. This is the right time of year to do it. I'm definitely paying for too many services right now. And you mentioned my kids being out of the house and everything. My kids are in different parts of the country, but for the most part they're still suckling on to all of the stuff we pay for, whether it's things like Netflix or Hulu or whatever, or Spotify, and they're still taking advantage of that. So I get all the benefits of the kids not being here with all the benefits of them being here, I guess. Anyway, I'm sure if I were to look at this, and I will soon, like I said, I'm going to be unhappy with how much we spend every month.
It has. I just did the same thing, and I was stunned.
But look, if everything went south tomorrow, if I lost my job, if my wife lost her job, and well, I guess we wouldn't worry so much about TV at that point. But I mean, obviously, internet is kind of a core electric, water, sewer type thing where it's kind of core to life these days. You need that. Anyone could cut back significantly on these entertainment services and save a lot of money every month. And if you had to be strict about it, it would not be a horrible thing to say, all right, honey, this month we're going to pay for Netflix. So let's focus on what Netflix has. We're going to watch this for a month. And then when that month comes up, next month we're going to focus on Hulu. Let's see what Hulu has to offer. You could play it like that. People are lazy, right? And we don't want to do that. So if we can afford, instead of throwing out $10 to $15 a month, we'll throw out $75 to $100 a month or whatever it is. We'll just pay for all of it, even though Disney Plus may sit there unwatched. HBO Max may sit there unwatched. There's different ways you can do these things. That's all. So
I think
to me, that's still huge.
When we talk about these streaming services, we're not talking about cord cutting, right? Because I think the definition of cord cutting is kind of veered into a whole different reason why you cancel cable. Originally, it was to cut the cord because you were spending way more money than you wanted because the content you were consuming was so minute towards minuscule compared to the price. You were paying $230 a month for your cable, but you were only consuming, 2 hours worth of content a week or whatever, 3 hours worth that you really wanted.
Yeah.
Now it's turned into, well, now I need Netflix because this show's on there. I need Hulu because this one. I need Apple. I need this. Now you're in cable territory.
Yeah, but again, listen. There's a lot. So I mentioned the ways you can kind of get around that, but I mean the other way to approach this is it takes a little bit of work. If you grew up like we did in a world where TV was on live and you had to watch it live and you could record it maybe or whatever, and things evolved obviously over time. I mean, you may still be used to turning on the TV. You might like sports. Sports are things that happen live, or you might want to watch the news or something like that. I mean, there's still live TV, obviously, but if you can kind of get over that for the most part, you can turn TV from being a kind of a lazy activity where you're clicking around, what's on, you go from channel to channel, to more of an intentional activity. And what I mean by that is, okay, what are we watching next? We're going to binge watch this series. This is what we're doing, and you kind of make that decision, and that's what you do, and I think there's something healthy about that. It takes a little while. It took me a little while. If you remember, whatever that was, 3.5 years ago or so, when we first moved to Pennsylvania, like we tried to cut the cord right up front and ran into difficulties, went back to cable for a little while, and then we just never looked back. And now we haven't had cable for a couple of years now, and and have only gone intermittently in and out of live TV services, which have gotten very expensive.
Well, what do you feel like you need to watch live?
Sports.
Like what? It's sports, right? So football, baseball, basketball.
Well, it varies by person. Yeah, I mean, sure.
Because I always think, like, for me, what is the like? Why do I like right now? I don't have cable, but I have YouTube TV, and I'm at the point that I need to cancel it, right? Because I'm not consuming enough content for $75 a month.
It's a crazy amount of money, and it's not YouTube's fault or Google's fault, right? To be clear, I mean, it's
the nature of rights. Yeah,
they're doing to these services what they did to cable, and whatever. We're all the victims of that, but sports are one thing. If you care about sports, you have to deal with sports, and so sports is complicated. Baseball has its own app and service. If you want to watch baseball, that's good. I'm not sure what the NBA does. I just got TV to watch NBA, but NFL sort of has their own app. As it turns out, this is one thing I discovered. Was it NFL or maybe it was baseball? I did this. Maybe it was baseball. I'm sorry, but I remember during it must have been the playoffs of the World Series or whatever, where. Like these, no, it was when, I'm sorry, I'm mixing things up. Sorry. When basketball came back, basketball doesn't have a central location to watch all the games. There isn't such a thing. So if you look at a game, like a Sunday where there's a couple of 3-4 basketball games on, national basketball games, they're all over the place. And you have to have something that has those things. Like, you could get NBA TV, but you're not going to get all the games. Some of them are on, I don't know exactly, NBC, TNT, CBS, whatever the channels are. And it gets complicated. And I think the worst thing about what's happening now is this complexity. And it's what I described as just like what you said earlier about, well, I want to watch, what's that new Picard show on? Is that CBS or Peacock? I can't remember.
CBS.
You have to, no, but you have to do the work, like you have to, you as an individual have to do the work. And to me, it's a huge stumbling block. I wish there was I think that's why I think these aggregator services, Apple TV or Google, I think is doing the best job right now, or Amazon or whatever, are so important, because you just want to go to a single place that you think of as your TV and search and say, I want to watch Picard or whatever the show may be. Who cares where it is?
See, and that's part of the problem, right? And now we have, CBS is now what? Paramount? They changed the name to Paramount, right? Paramount Plus.
Dude, I don't know.
Yeah, CBS All Access now became
Plus.
Paramount Plus.
We stream Friday the 13th movies and something else.
Listen, I understand why everybody's doing it, but now, I think it's a major story that a network like WWE that had 1.5 million U.S. subscribers, that was one of the first ones to say, you know what, we're going to have our own network like that at $9 a month. I mean, we're not bad. 1.5 million subscribers when you have about 2.5 million people that watch weekly to your regular TV. But now what they've done, and it's kind of smart, right? Instead of having only 1.5 million people that can watch a pay-per-view potentially, now they have 33 million people, because Peacock has 33 million subscribers. Is this the future of MLB? You know what I mean? Is this something that MLB now will say, you know what, we're going to now lease our content or do a rights deal with Hulu or Amazon and just have everything on there?
Yeah. It is going to be a rare thing for any major sports, what do you call it? Not a network, but a sports, what is that called? League or whatever, that they would be on one thing, right? Because it is obviously so much more lucrative if you're the NBA, the NFL does this, to give rights away in different ways in different places. The NFL invented a Sunday night football game so that they could license it to some network and exclusively, right, when the Monday night moved or whatever. I mean, it would, ideally as a consumer, if I want to watch the NFL and that's my thing, I should be able to subscribe to NFL.com or whatever it's called and see any game I want, no matter where I live, because there are blackout restrictions. And no matter where their games are being played, I should just be able to choose. It should be like the NFL Red Zone or whatever. I mean, but it's not. You can't do that. That doesn't exist. Even in baseball, MLB is, in my experience, is the best one. But even then, you suffer from blackout rules, which are stupid. And then the World Series comes or the playoffs, and it gets really dicey because not everything's available. And I should say the other thing I hate about it is they only show the game. And I know that sounds like a silly thing to say, but when there's a baseball game and it's in Boston and maybe we really care about the Red Sox, even though we don't live there anymore, it would be really neat to see some of the stuff that happens right before the game. And it would be really neat for the signal not to just shut right off the second the game's over. You don't even get like 30 seconds of after the game discussion. It just when that game's over, your MLB cuts it out, and
Done.
It's like, guys,
it's over.
Come on, look,
no post show, nothing.
No, nothing, and it is. Oh, it's so aggravating. And it's not like it's super expensive. That's not really the point. It's just that you're paying. I'm literally paying for this. This is the thing I want. I should be able to pay the NFL or the MLB or the NBA or whomever to see any game I want to see at any time, no matter where I am. I don't understand it. And it has to do with licensing and obviously, rights and so forth. Horrible.
So I find it very interesting. I'm curious because I think this year we're going to see a lot of changes to the way that these streaming, I guess, services are being bundled or not bundled because it's more than you think, because then you have the music services, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have all the other subscription services that you pay monthly for.
Sure.
It really, $1 here, $1 there starts adding up, and
it's not $1 here though. It's $9.99 here. It's $14.99 here. It's I pay for Spotify and for YouTube Music because my kids want Spotify. I pay for Audible. I pay for I don't even want to think about how many friggin' TV services I pay for or whatever. Like, it is astonishing how much we pay for or get. That's why it's a healthy thing to every once in a while actually take a look at it and really think about what you're using, because I know for myself, I mean, I probably don't use most of it most of the time.
Yeah. Very interesting thing to look out to, but I want to take a moment. I have a bunch of questions for you, actually, which I want to go over. But I have a whole bunch of questions for you that I want to go over. But before we do, I want to talk about our great sponsor, and that's Glasswire. Are you having network issues? Instantly reveal the bandwidth hogs. I know a lot of people discovered a lot of internet issues over the last couple of months due to the pandemic and COVID and people working from home. They're using Zoom, Google Meets and Teams, and they're using all these services that are relying on decent bandwidth. And all of a sudden, people realize, oh my God, my internet is not so great. It's not that your internet is not great in some situations. It's that something is hogging up the bandwidth. And you don't know this. You don't know if there's an app that's slowing down your connection. You don't know if there's some sort of malware injected into your computer. There's a lot of different scenarios that are playing out, and a service like Glasswire is absolutely perfect. You could detect network hogs, bandwidth hogs that slow down your connection. You can see the apps that are phoning home without your permission, instantly know if there's a new device within your network, which is always interesting to see what's pinging. I got a frantic phone call. A friend of mine installed this, right? Because he heard us talk about it, Paul. And he called me and he's like, what is this on my network? Like, he's trying to figure out. And I'm like, he's like, I got like 5 of them and they're on the network. He's freaking out. And I'm like, what is it? He's like, it's using the 2.4 gigahertz. It's not so I knew it wasn't a computer. And I looked at it. I go, did you just buy smart lights? He's like, I got a whole bunch for Christmas. Why? I'm like, those are your smart lights. He's like, why would it be? Why? I don't understand. Why is it showing up? I'm like, because it's connected on the network. It's doing it. This app is telling you. He's like, oh my God, I had no idea. So these are things that you don't know sometimes, and this could affect your network bandwidth. Depending on what the device is, and a lot of people don't even know it's connected. It's pinging. It's also a great piece of software. The software is a great piece of software, so I highly recommend it. You could check out detect suspicious network activity, and it'll check for spy. If you have spyware, malware. But also, here's the great thing, right? You could check it out. Go to glasswire.com. Whether it's malware, bandwidth hogs, or privacy violating apps, they could be blocked. And Glasswire will help you do that. Glasswire.com. I want to thank them for supporting the show. I thought it was hysterical, Paul. He was freaking out. He was like, what is this? What is this? YEELIGHT. I'm like, those are Yee lights. Did somebody buy you lights? He's like, yeah, I actually got colored lights for my for his office. I'm like, there you go. That's your answer. He thought it was some sort of crazy thing happening on his computer. Talk about crazy things in the middle of a global pandemic. Apple posts a record quarter. Today, Apple reported, actually, this is not today. This is yesterday.
Last night, yeah.
But last night, Apple reported that it had a net income of $28.76 billion on revenues of $111 billion, what the firm calls an all-time record high. This is unbelievable. I mean, it's not unbelievable, but it kind of is, considering...
No, it is unbelievable. I don't even understand how this is possible.
Well, here's a couple scenarios, right? I mean, we're going under the impression that, people have been a little bit more conservative with their spending.
Yeah.
And generally when that happens, you start these reports, especially fourth quarter report that comes in, will be impacted by this. But we didn't see that on the Apple side. Do you think it was a new phone launch that did this, or do you think people bought? Where is the revenue coming from exactly?
Yeah, so right. I mean, over half of it is coming from iPhone, right? To me, the thing, Apple is so unique. It's hard to understand this kind of result on so many levels. For example, like the second biggest company in the world right now, Microsoft, right? 1 billion in revenues. The number one company in the world is Apple, over double those revenues. Like, what? Yeah. It's crazy. Like Samsung, I haven't read this up yet, but I think the revenues were somewhere in the 55 billion range. So they're like half an Apple, So Apple is unique, right? Apple is a company that, despite the fact that most of their money comes from hardware, has incredibly high margins. This is not unusual for a hardware maker. It never happens. Like, they're the only hardware maker that has huge margins on hardware. 39% it was in the most recent quarter. 39% wow. Margin. It's crazy. And then, they have the ultimate Halo product because, they cited this figure. It was like 1.65 billion people are in their ecosystem. They own one or more of their hardware products. 1 billion of them own iPhones, right? So the vast majority of them, I would say 99% of Apple's customers have an iPhone, and then they have one or more of an iPad, headphones of some kind, a watch, whatever else, right? So they make all a Mac, whatever. That stuff's incredible. And now, of course, they're getting on the services bandwagon, right? So as of today, or as of not just, this isn't a new thing, but today, services is Apple's number 2 business, right? And of course, they expanded their services dramatically in that last quarter. They introduced the Apple One bundle. They introduced Fitness Plus, which I think is going to go gangbusters. And then, of course, they had a good iPhone launch, which is job one for those guys. But it's kind of a super cycle for Apple, where a really big percentage of people had been kind of holding on to whatever iPhone they had. And this past Christmas or holiday quarter for sure, and we're going to see it again this quarter now, are upgrading, and they're upgrading by and large to the expensive ones too, which is crazy. Like most of the sales were to the Pro phones, not to the non-Pro phones.
Which I found that interesting because always the argument for Apple to release more inexpensive phones and entry-level phones is that
I know
they're going to lose on the higher end models, because why would you buy, always the example, your 14-year-old wants an iPhone. Are you going to go buy them an iPhone, a Pro model?
Okay. Let me give you a non-theoretical, because that's exactly what we did. Yeah. My kids were both using 4-year-old iPhone 8s. So we originally with Mark, kind of off on his own, our deal was, look, this is your last iPhone that we're paying for, so you're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And we never really discussed Kelly's. She just graduated from high school, so we didn't really talk about that with her. But last year we didn't travel, we didn't go on our home swap, we didn't do anything. And I said to my wife, I said, maybe we should think about upgrading the kids' iPhones. And she's like, yeah, that makes sense, whatever. So I talked to him and I said, look, we'd like to get you iPhones for Christmas, if that makes sense to you guys. I'd prefer for you guys to stick with the non-pro version, but that's up to you or whatever. And Mark kind of came back and said, he goes, honestly, I was looking at what's going on and what the differences are and everything. And he's like, if it makes sense, I'd really prefer to get the iPhone Pro. And he said primarily for the camera improvements. And he says, I know this is something I'm going to hold on to for several years, so I think it makes sense to get a better one.
Good argument by Mark. He's a smart kid.
Yeah. And aside from the self-interest stuff there, I would say, I agreed with it. And so I said, it's fine. If you guys want to both get the Pro one, that's fine. And I think that's the mentality. You got to understand, aside from Apple just being unique, I mean, Apple's customers, and again, I'm generalizing, but have this habit of just throwing out the credit card at Apple whenever they announce anything, right? And so they have that rare user base that's like either, I don't like, I want to say they're rich anymore because it's so many people, but it's like they're rich or they just act like they're rich, like they just like they'll buy anything, But if you want to look at it more pragmatically too, I mean, for those people who were holding on to their iPhones, maybe they were spending money in intervening years in other Apple products or services or whatever. That's the mentality. It's like, well, look, it's been 4 years. I'm upgrading. I'm not getting the cheap one.
Yeah.
I mean, I just used this phone for 4 years. Okay. You could make that argument.
I understand why. Like, listen, I changed mine every 2 to 3 years, right? The last iPhone I had
every 2 to 3 months.
Well, yeah, you earned it. Yeah. I don't feel like I have to get a new one every year anymore. I think that they're good enough now where this could last you 2 years, at least 3 years. Listen, I had an iPhone 7 for how long? An iPhone 7 Plus. It was perfectly fine. I just didn't feel like I needed to upgrade because the upgrades weren't as much, and I'm glad that I've held off. But I got to tell you, my daughter, she's 5, okay? She told, and I couldn't believe this conversation. It just shows you, we're such a society where we just have to. It's like keeping up the Joneses, She came to me and said one of the girls in the class was making fun of another kid in the class and said, "Your mommy doesn't have an iPhone."
Oh boy,
these are 5-year-olds. Okay,
yeah, it's not okay.
And my kid didn't understand. Like, we don't raise our kids like that. So my kids have no clue, no concept of that kind of stuff, right? But I couldn't, and I didn't say anything. I'm like, I don't know, maybe she was making a joke. I don't want to go into like a whole detail about, disparaging remarks about people that use Android phone. But apparently that's a thing, right? And that's a huge thing amongst middle school kids, high school kids. And I find it so bizarre. And really, it just shows you we're in the middle of a global pandemic, but yet you have a premium company, a premium brand, providing you with blockbuster quarterly results in a terrible time. We're not in the global recession that we thought. We're in a different type of recession, and the other shoe has yet to drop. And I keep saying this when it comes to the financial markets and everything else, but it's astonishing to me that they posted these earnings.
It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. But I don't know. I don't know what to say. And this is not a commentary on Apple. I mean, Apple makes incredible products, really high quality. I think generally speaking, even though, I may have whatever opinions about this, that, or the other thing when it comes to Apple, but I mean, if the argument is like, look, I want to buy something high quality because I know it's going to last. I like these guys because of their privacy stance or whatever. Okay, fine. And I'm going to use the thing for several years. So whatever, it's a little more expensive than this other thing, but, or maybe it isn't, in many cases, because honestly, when you look at, the entry-level Macs and the phones, I mean, these things aren't really any more expensive than competing products. And so you make that decision and that's fine. I mean, that's one way to go for sure. Doing it during a pandemic year to like record revenues across the board, by the way, double-digit growth in every single business unit, double-digit growth in every single geographic
in every business unit.
Yep. is just astonishing. You know, um, I, I just don't even.
I mean, is it that people ended up having to buy computers also? I mean, I know that they sold a lot of MacBooks. I know, like MacBook Pros and computers.
Sure.
They probably sold a tremendous amount.
They sold even more iPads in a way. I mean, maybe not more unit wise, but I mean, revenues were about the same. And I don't know. I have no explanation for this. Like, these phones are like the new phones are not a dramatic step up from what they had a year ago.
Yeah.
There's kind of a more iconic design, which you may or may not like, whatever. There's more versions of it, right? This year they introduced this holiday season, 4 new iPhones for the first time, literally 4 brand new models, 2 Pro, 2 non-Pro. There's a new Apple Watch. There is every year. The new services, like I said, wearables.
Yeah,
Apple
5
Watch
different
primarily.
options. 5 different phones with multiple options.
5, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Like and they had a hard time meeting the demand. Not as hard as like Sony and Microsoft in the console space. I mean, they got them out there, but you often had to wait a couple weeks to get an iPhone if that's what you wanted.
Yeah.
Like I said, I just can't explain it. This is not the normal. If Apple was like 25-50% over Microsoft, you'd be like, okay, this is the consumer business, big deal, whatever. It's like, I don't know where this came from. I don't even understand it anymore.
How were Microsoft's earnings? I'm curious. I saw that Brad was posting them, but I saw Brad
$43 billion in
bunch.
revenues. Yeah, no, Apple or Microsoft, sorry, was huge as well. I look at the consumer stuff. So obviously, Xbox was humongous, right? Xbox was biggest console launch quarter in history, biggest single month in history. It was just huge. And if they could have made more, they would have sold every single one of them.
Yeah.
And of course, they're moving into services too, which is really smart. And then Windows and Surface, kind of a mixed bag. Honestly, Surface didn't do that great. Surface had a $2 billion quarter for the first time, which sounds great. But year over year, they were only up 3%. And that's kind of weak in a year in which PC sales were so important. You'd think they would have moved more product than they did. It's like a holiday season of a pandemic year. They should have sold out of Surface.
And they
so
didn't.
I don't know they didn't. Yeah. Windows did well.
Is it
overall.
perception? Is it marketing? I always find it interesting because I got to tell you, and you're going to find this crazy. Okay. I've had a Surface. The first Surface I bought was an RT. Absolutely hated it. If I told you that I have 1, 2, I'm going to count it. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 Surface Pro 3s. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
I still use them.
Mm-hmm.
They work perfectly fine. It is probably one of my favorite computers I've ever had.
Wow.
Okay. And people are going to think I'm nuts. I don't have any computer that I still use. I mean, I use my Surface Pro 3 all the time. And I have a Surface Pro 4 in my office, but I use this in my house constantly, and it's perfectly fine for my needs.
Oh, excuse me.
Do you think they reached a certain point? I feel like the Surface Pro 3 was one of those devices where it was matured enough where it was good enough. It was fine to continue using. I'm not saying that this is a use case, and if I use it as my daily, it would be enough for me. But do you think Microsoft with their Surface line has kind of reached this, well, it's good enough point?
No, I think they've reached the limitations of the demand for the types of things that they make. So Surface Pro 3 is actually the ideal example because that was the last time there was a major redesign of that product. There's a Surface Pro X that has a new design, but they haven't brought it to the mainstream one. So Surface Pro 4, 5, 6, 7, and 7 Plus have all come out since then, and they look exactly the same.
Yeah.
And when you look at Surface usage out in the world, Surface Pro is by far the best-selling Surface. And if you add up all of the other ones that look just like it, Surface Pro X, Surface 3, Surface Go, and Go 2, that's like 90% of all Surfaces out in the world. So they made this one thing that people wanted, and I think they pretty much sold as many as they can. And I think, Surface, I mean, to their credit, they've tried to expand into other product types, and they desperately want to make new form factors for some reason, but they have not been successful at that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the simplest way to say it is they're just not making the right mix of products for the marketplace. Like the Mac, the Mac by itself has kind of a minority market share in the PC market, right? So it's like less than 8%. But that business is between 4 and 5 times the size of Surface. So I mean, Surface doesn't even make the chart. It's like a boutique hobby.
Yeah.
It's a completely different kind of business.
Since you brought up the Mac, I kind of wanted to ask you. I was a big proponent for non-touch displays. Okay.
Yep.
For many, I think you were kind of on that early on. I never felt that it was necessary. I don't want to touch my display. I thought it's silly. Listen, this is one of those moments for me, right? Maybe I'm old. Maybe this was the cutoff for me that I've hit the age where I don't really care for the new stuff. But I didn't really need it. I was like, I don't get it, because I'm using Windows a lot more for some stuff. I don't understand how the Mac doesn't have touchscreen.
I know. So
I think it's bonkers. I think it's actually it's
worse than you're even saying, because Apple, of course, sells all these touch devices. They know,
and they know the
how
interface.
Important touch is better than anybody. Yeah. So this is what I say now to people because I still run into people like, I don't want touch. I don't need it. I'm never going to use it. And it's like, okay, does the presence of touch capabilities in the display hurt you in any way? Does it? Because if it doesn't, just don't worry about it. Yeah. It's not like touch displays are dimmer or they can't be seen as well from the side. It's just, you wouldn't even notice it.
You could also disable it.
Disable it, I guess. Yeah. But I mean, but don't, because the thing is, what you'll find is, on a laptop, right? A laptop, it's not going to lay flat. It's not going to fold over or whatever, turn into a tablet. Yeah. You're not going to be writing on it with a pen. You're not going to be touching it a lot, but you may be surprised to find out that you are touching it. And the way you're surprised is the way you found out, because you would go and use your Mac and you start touching the screen. You're like, wait, how come I can't, and you don't even kind of realize you're doing it.
And dude, it's even worse. It wasn't me at first. It was my kids.
Oh, but of course. I mean, the kids grew up in a multi-touch world.
I mean, it's actually, they looked at me like they were upset. My daughter was so upset. She had a Zoom meeting, right, for school. It's effing nuts, right? She's 5 years old. She has Zoom meetings.
Sure.
And she's like, I have a Zoom meeting. Can I use?
Like she dressed up top. But she's not wearing any pants.
No pants, just wearing a tank top, right?
It's been like a tuxedo up here.
She has a little briefcase, had her hair done, makeup is done already. She's like, I got a Zoom meeting. I can't, and I have a Chromebook for her. She's like, I can't, and I had a problem. It was like in a boot. It was just sitting like that, and I had to fix it. I was like, use mine. She goes, and she knows she could click on the app. She knows how to do it. It's actually mind blowing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And what did she do? First thing she does is this.
Touch it. Yeah.
She's going like that, and she's like, "It's not working. It's broken." I'm like, "No, it's not a touchscreen." She looked at me, and I know what she's thinking. What does that even mean? She's like, "Listen, old man, what the hell do you mean? It's not a touchscreen. It's 5." And I'm just seeing I'm like, "No, listen, it's a Mac. It doesn't have touchscreen." She goes, "Mac sucks," and just walked away. You know what I did? I brought
Apple's
the Surface out.
Excuses for this are just, they make no sense.
I think now that they're in that point, right? Because that generation now is hitting the point that they're going to now have some sort of buying, not buying power, but buying influence. And it's going to, I'm not saying it's going to be make or break for them, right? Because they're a blockbuster company. But when the perception is that the product is not hip to some extent, then it becomes a problem, because again, Apple, the whole thing was perception. And I always talk about this. And somebody wrote back to me, he works for a major marketing firm, and he goes, I don't hear a lot of tech shows talk about the perception of how you market a product. And one of the best things that I could bring up is Windows 8. The perception of Windows 8 was far worse than the actual interface. And I hated the Windows 8 interface early on, right? 8.1, they got it right. But the perception was that it was not good. And when that happens, you're doomed.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, Windows Vista suffered from this problem. Windows Me suffered from this
Windows
problem.
Vista got it right by what? SP8?
Well, it was only one SP, but
I know,
it was Windows 7 was where they got it right. But Yeah. Anyway, so sure. So I don't know what this. I don't know. I mean, the Mac is obviously doing fairly well. There's a lot of excitement around it now because of the M1 stuff. But that's the thing. You can run iPad and iPhone apps on this thing now, right? So I've just started experimenting with that.
On what, on the Mac?
On the MacBook Pro, yeah. And it's not that great of an experience, honestly.
What apps are you running? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I just ran a few up front just to see what it was like. So one of the first, because the way they present it, if you go into the Mac App Store, actually, I'm not 100% sure how it must be apps I downloaded or paid for on an iPhone or an iPad, and then they're shown in reverse chronological order. So the newest one's the first, I guess.
Oh, let me see.
So I'm looking at the front of the top. It's like you can't alphabetize it. It's just whatever order it's in. So I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird. So I looked at the first couple of screens worth, and it was like, okay, HBO Max. I'm like, okay, that's a good one. Like, what might that look like? And that particular app, they all have problems. The truth is, they all have problems. So they display in an aspect ratio and in a size on the screen that matches the device on which it would normally be running. So HBO Max looks like an iPad screen, but you can't stretch it out. You can't make it bigger. When you play movies, they look good, but you can make them full screen, but they don't. It just doesn't work right with the Mac screen. It's just not the same. It just doesn't fit in the screen. And then one of the other ones that sticks out in my mind is I went down to the beginning and I started scrolling up from the bottom, and it goes back to like I think it's 2009 or something.
So what did you went down to your account on the Mac, and then it's all the apps that you've downloaded.
Store. Yeah. Okay. If you go to the Mac App Store and you go to your account, you can see what you've already purchased and downloaded.
Okay. I'm there right now.
And so there's two views. There's a Mac, and then I think it says iPad and iPhone or something.
Oh, I don't see
so
that.
I went all the way down to the beginning. It might only be on the M1 Max. I'm not really sure, but
it's possible it's on the M1 Mac.
Yeah. So I tried to run. What's it called? It's the little Qbert looking guy that jumps up and down, and you jump up. It's like an old game that was really popular like 10 years ago. What's it called?
I know what you're talking about. Can't think of it.
It kills me. Anyway, so it appears on screen as a tiny iPhone screen, right? And you can't resize it, which is goofy, but it's like really tiny. And I'm like, okay, well, how would this work? Like, I can't touch the screen. I'm like, if I tap the trackpad, will it jump or something? I couldn't figure it out. Like, I couldn't get it to work. And one of the things you see as you go through the list of your purchases or downloads, it will say something like name of app or game. And then it will, if it's actually been optimized for the Mac in some way, it will just say designed for iPad.
Okay.
But if it isn't, it will say, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, so these words might be not exactly right, but it will say something like designed for iPad, not optimized. And not Flappy Birds. What the hell is that thing called?
Jumpman with the rocket?
No, damn it. No, it's fucking so stupid. I'm sorry, it's bugging me. I can't think of it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But that game, I don't remember, but probably wasn't optimized, right? So I don't know how you would, I'm not sure exactly how you would even play it. So I've just started looking at these things, but it's just not a great experience. So clearly, look, even if this thing supported touch, let's say the MacBook Pro supported touch, right? Solved all of our problems, supposedly. You're still not going to be able to play this thing on a MacBook Pro. What are you going to do? Hit the screen like this? That would get tiring, right? So, and I'm sure that's their kind of argument. But I mean, I think for iPad apps in particular, because you want to use like productivity apps, but whatever, mobile apps running on a Mac, you want to have touch. You want to have better form factors too, right? You want to be able to use this thing like a tablet. And I just don't see them going down that. Because if you could fold the thing in half and tap the screen like it was a tablet, that would work great. But then, they're never going to do that, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I do find it interesting how they've laid the interface. Windows just couldn't get that right. They couldn't do an app store.
Right.
They had every opportunity. Somebody brought this up to me. I was talking. I don't think it was IS. I was just talking to IS too. But Microsoft had that idea in Vista, right? To have an app store.
An app store.
Early on, didn't they have the concept where you could go to like the app store and you could download? Was it in Vista?
I don't think so.
I can't remember what it was.
I mean, app stores aren't. It's not like Apple invented this. Like we had app stores on mobile. I mean, we have app like stores. Like the Chrome OS web store, they probably call it, like where you get extensions and stuff, is sort of the same thing. I mean,
I just felt like they could have avoided a lot of issues for people if they had an organized store where it said like the top 10 apps for Windows, Skype, Office, Excel, and then whatever else bullshit, that they have.
You're right. So this is one thing that Microsoft got right on the Mac that they never got right on Windows. And this is the shame of it. You should be able to go to the Microsoft Store on Windows 10, search for Microsoft Word,
and get it.
Find Microsoft Word, download it, install it, and use it. And if you have a Microsoft 365 subscription, then it gives you all the full power of the app. But they don't do that, right? So Microsoft, at some point in the past, I'd have to get, just off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly, but let's say 2013, 2016, certainly. But at some point, they redesigned the Office installer from Office 365, now called Microsoft 365, so that it only installs all of it. You have to get all of it. You can't just install an app. On the Mac, you can go into the store and I just want Word. I don't need Excel. Yeah. I don't need Outlook. I don't need PowerPoint. I only need Word, and you can just install Word. What a concept, The problem with it, the Windows Store is originally called the Microsoft Store now, is that it's just full of crap apps made by amateur developers that are rip-offs or terrible, attempts at emulating another app. And like you said, they don't have all the mainstream Microsoft apps. Like if you search for Microsoft Word in the Microsoft Store today, you will find a way to buy Microsoft 365 Home, but I just want the damn app. Why doesn't Microsoft put its own apps in the store? I don't know. It's very strange.
Very strange. I found a recommendation on Thurrott.com I want to talk about before we wrap it up. So somebody recommended, somebody asked on your forum, actually, on your message board, what's a good application or what's a good way to download YouTube videos? Did you see that post on there?
Yeah, it's funny that came up. The reason that's there is because that post is actually from like a year ago or something.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And what happens is someone posted like a spam comment to it,
and it blew up.
Deleted.
Okay.
Well, it puts it back at the top of the queue.
Yeah.
So when someone comments in a post in the forum, it goes to the top.
I got to tell you,
it's back.
Thank God for that spammer. Whoever he was, I welcome him. I know that it's probably a nuisance for you, but he actually saved me a lot of hassle. So
because now there are new responses to this, right?
There's tons of new responses, and that's the amazing thing. So I don't think this is necessary for most people, right? So what I do for the wrestling stuff is that I will rip like a moment in wrestling from that day, and I'll find the video on YouTube, and I use that for Instagram, for social media. So I'll post like, today Paul Thurrott became world heavyweight champion in 1968. Okay, right. You were a young child then.
Sure.
It was a fluke finish. You grabbed Bruno Sammartino's tights and then you just pinned him, and that was it. So
okay.
But there was an application. It was a Chrome extension. It was called Downloader. What was it?
YouTube video.
Video download helper. Okay, that was the name.
Okay. Yep.
And it's against their terms of service, so they pulled it. Of course they did, right? So you had to use it in Firefox, and the Firefox one is really crappy. It doesn't pick up. It picks up weird formats. So it's essentially a broken application. It doesn't work right. There's tons of other extensions you could do, but a lot of them, I'm not going to say most, but a lot of them have malware. They're not good applications. And I've gotten hit with this because, and listen, and I'm smartened up a little bit. I pretty much know, like, don't download certain applications. This thing had a 4-star review in the Google, the App Store for the extensions for Chrome. I'm like, okay, I'm going to download this. All of a sudden, I'm getting weird web pages. Like, if I go to like Thurrott.com, it'll redirect to someplace else.
Yep.
And
Classic.
So I'm like, F this. I'm like, you know what? I don't need to do it this way. And I did it a very convoluted way where I'm screen grabbing, whatever. On Thurrott.com, first thing I see, some guy goes, Alton, I think his name was, goes 4K downloader. It works for many popular services. I'm like, you know what? let me see what this is. It's an actual application for Windows and Mac, and the thing works great. Now you got to pay for it. Whatever. It's a paid service, but I think they have like let me open this app. Don't move it. Sorry, I screwed this up.
Which is the one that you chose?
4K video downloader. It's a standalone application. It's not an extension. So what you do, it's so simple. You can subscribe to it. So if you could activate it, let me see, get a license. I think it's like $15 for personal use, $45 for pro use, and I think that includes 7 simultaneous downloads instead of 3. Who cares? I'm not downloading 7 things. $15,
sure. And
you could use this app. Now, by the way, not an advertiser, nothing like that, right? I was stunned to see this because just yesterday I'm thinking to myself, I need to figure out a way to do this that's a little bit easier because it's a pain in the ass to grab these videos in a high quality format. Well, there you go. Standalone app. Just grabs it, rips it, done. And HD, whatever. It does up to, I think, whatever the HD version is. But generally, I'm not doing over 720p anyway. But I thought it was really funny that I was literally thinking this out loud. And there it is on Thurrott.com.
Yeah. Yeah, I have I don't know, I think it's just called YouTube Video Downloader or something. It's that I've been using for years. But depending on how you get it, like, yeah, you can get like malware with it.
Yeah, a lot of them. And I'm stunned. How are they not able to try? I mean, I think they eventually get it. And I think the trick is that these companies put out like a legitimate, whatever it is, I'm sure it's whatever the software is. They put it out legitimately. They let it get popular for like a year. And then all of a sudden they put something in it.
They slide in a little.
They slide in.
A little payload.
And you know what you do? You may see somebody wrote like, oh, this is malware, but it has 4 stars with thousands of reviews.
Or it's one of those things like during setup, if you click the wrong things, you'll get other stuff installed. And I don't know. Yeah.
Paul, anyway, I have a Mac. I have a Mac. They don't do that on Macs.
Sorry.
What is this? Kazaa? I'm downloading Kazaa
I have an M1 Mac. Nothing runs on it. Not even malware.
Not even malware. It's so well protected. You can't even run
but
out.
I'll tell you, when they do figure out how to get malware on there, it's going to be wicked fast.
What do you think? I haven't asked you what your thoughts are of it.
I think it's great. I like, I mean, the current crop of machines is just the same hardware from before, obviously. And I think that stuff's going to evolve over time. But I've only had the MacBook Pro going for, I don't know, 4 or 5 days now, but it's a nice machine. It's quiet and the battery life is astonishing.
Yeah, it's good. I'm using this monstrosity.
The beast. Yeah.
The 16-inch MacBook Pro right now.
Sure. It doubles as like a Dish Network receiver.
Antenna. I put it on my roof and I just go like this and there you go.
It's just like TV comes right in.
Yeah. It's actually way too big. This thing is obscene.
We're back into like
the 16 inches. I don't mind it that it's static, right?
Right.
But the 15-inch was big.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm not just talking about the screen real estate. I get it. You're paying. It's 16. No, it's a 16-inch display.
It's bulky.
It's bulky. Like this thing is freaking thick. Look at the thickness. Hold on.
There's a denseness to it that's kind of hard to explain. Plus, there's like 5 inches on either side of the keyboard.
Yeah,
it's just so big.
Yeah, I know. All right, Paul, want to do a little bonus show right after this?
Sure.
We got a couple minutes, guys. If you enjoy the show, sorry, the last couple of weeks have been nuts. I'm going to tell you, life has taken a crazy, all good stuff. Nothing bad, nothing terrible, but it's been a hectic, hectic 2020 and the holiday season was just terrible. And I got bummed out. Nothing bad. I just got bummed out with everything. Sometimes you just get like that. But we're back. We're doing the show. We'll be back next week. But if you enjoy the show, go ahead and support us. Patreon.com/whatthetech. You can go there. Fund us as little as $1 per episode. It really helps us out. Keeps the show going. 10 years we've been doing this. I think we're approaching our anniversary, Paul. So maybe by that point, and this is what I'm hoping. Maybe by
silver. What do you mean?
Yeah. What do we get? A feather?
I don't know.
Cotton? Is it cotton? Whatever. Whenever this pandemic is over, I am planning to do a super show. Paul and I have never done a show together in person. That has never happened.
It's kind of weird.
And that is so weird. And that is so bizarre to me that I've been doing a show longer with you than anybody else. and we've never done the show in person. And I think it's because we actually like
we
to
see
hang
each
out.
other all the time.
We
Normally,
do.
I mean, we haven't this past year,
but I think it's because we like to hang out, you know, and we don't want to like stop it because we see each other once every couple months, so we want to enjoy the time.
Yeah.
I think what I want to do, and maybe we could do this at Rattle in the other Rattle, right? Because the other one's closed.
Assuming it's open. Dude.
I don't even know. Assuming that they come back, which I hope.
Yeah.
I would like to do like a super show. Me, you, Mary Jo, and Brad.
Wow.
And we could do like a live thing. Live and in living color. I want to do that. I want to plan that for
New York.
this year.
It's whatever the hell this is.
It's what the tech. Yeah, it's live from New York. I want to do that this year. I feel like we never did it. And I think this is a great opportunity once everything settles. Obviously, when everything is fine. I don't want to rush it. I'm not saying May. I'm not saying June. When things are fine, let's plan something fun and let's do something fun. I have that goal for this year. For all things Paul, go to Thurrott.com. If you want tips like the one I got from Paul, head on over to Thurrott.com. Their forum was very helpful. That spammer. Thank you to that spammer for that wonderful bump of that thread. Head on over to Thurrott.com. You can sign up for Thurrott Premium. Get access to all these exclusive blogs that Paul does and Brad does. You guys do an unbelievable job over there. And that's it, guys. You can follow me on Twitter, of course. Andrew Zarin. You can follow Paul at Thurrott. And we'll see you all next time. Take care.